Industry data shows that over 70% of computer vision projects never make it into sustained production. That's because it's due to breakdown and data drift, fragile pipelines, and lack of operational monitoring. My name is Paul Nashawaty. I'm the practice lead for the AppDev practice, and I'm joined by Jonathan of Plainsight. Jonathan, how you doing? And welcome to join me today.
Thanks for having me, Paul. Pleasure to be here.
So, Jonathan, it is awesome to have you here. New role. You have exciting news. Why don't you tell the audience about it?
Yeah, so we just announced general availability of our VisOps platform, the Plainsight platform. It's been kind of under development for the last 2 years and sort of in beta for about the last 3 to 6 months, depending on when you want to call it a beta. But we finally are confident enough in it. It being kind of a new domain and a new practice we're trying to evangelize to the market, we didn't kind of want to release MVP. So we held it back for a while, made sure it was in really good shape, but we just announced that last week, and we're very proud of it, and we can't wait to get the world using it.
So super excited to hear that. Let's take a step back. In the last 6 months or so, there's been some changes at Plainsight. We want to see that you joined as a new CEO. Organizations are really looking at platforms to help fix, those common failures, which is what you're talking about here. And the Vision AI production is being really replaced by these, what I would call science experiments, right? And they're being replaced with automation, continuous monitoring, and retraining, which is what you were talking about in this announcement. And I'm really excited to dive into that. But by using these modular building blocks, open source tools, it really does democratize the technology, allowing for general software engineers to help build resilient enterprise-grade systems for the physical world. So first off, Jonathan, I'd love to hear your vision. Where do you want, before we jump into the announcement and what's going on, what's your vision on Plainsight and the platform and where it's going?
Yeah, well, our vision revolves around being a true VisOps infrastructure software company. So Vision AI isn't new. You could kind of draw a pretty straight line all the way back to OCR type stuff back in the 90s. It's been a domain that struggled to really grow outside of some early boxes until kind of the generative AI revolution recently, which enabled so much more. Now the problem is, to your point, a lot of it is science experiments still, and it's really fun in a lab, but it doesn't exist in enterprise production, which is where software at scale, really sophisticated stuff really needs to be. And we kind of found this out the hard way. Like, we didn't found Plainsight to be an infrastructure software company. We were trying to just be a computer vision company. And we had clients and we were building computer vision applications, and they kept failing. We couldn't find the tools in the market, and we luckily, our founders, which as you mentioned, I'm not a founder, have deep kind of infrastructure software backgrounds. I myself have some infrastructure software backgrounds, which is why I was brought in as well. But we realized, look, there's a huge gap in the market in the tech stack, and if nobody else is going to do it, we need to, because we literally can't succeed without these tooling. So if no one else can build it, we might as well do it. And that's really kind of what we've been working on for about the last 18 months. We figured that out pretty early. Those kind of eye-wateringly high failure rates, they aren't made up. You see them. Every company's going through them. Every vendor's going through them. And we decided, hey, instead of trying to win on 30% of our deals, let's just fix the problem.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And there's, like you said, there's kind of this maturity that Vision AI has kind of gone through, right? Whether you're counting, livestock at an auction, or if you're doing computer vision for smart cities, where you're, going down to the level of seeing the compression in just people's shoes to check their weight. I mean, I know some of this is kind of that science fiction kind of approach, but that's where the vision, or that's where the direction this is all going, is to say we could take maturity to simple solutions to all the way up to these complex solutions of checking, different sensors and such. But let's talk about Vision AI and how it breaks in production. And really, how does the Plainsight platform really fix that with VisOps? How does it really help with that?
Yeah, so the place I would start is that MLOps products aren't designed to support Vision AI. When kind of the LLM revolution started not that long ago, a bunch of infrastructure software people came along and said, hey, we need to support this because this enterprises want to use this tech. So we need to get it out of the lab and into prod. And that happened pretty quickly, and that market's still maturing, but there's some pretty well-defined kind of tooling there. Problem is it doesn't support vision. By definition, vision interacts with a messy, organic, dynamic world. It's a direct connection, a direct interface between computer systems and that world. You remove all human operators and you connect it through a camera. LLMs generally don't have the same extremes. Kind of on the inference side, you deal with that, but that's not really on the model training side. You train something on a corpus of information. That information can be quite static, and that's the problem. Because in a laboratory, computer vision engineers also train these models on kind of a static corpus of samples. They're like, okay, we're going to train this thing. Let's say we're going to count cattle. We're going to get a bunch of video of cattle moving through a gate or something like that, and we'll train a model to count. You deploy that in the real world, the cattle aren't at the gate. They're over there. The ranch looks different. The stockyard looks different. It's a different kind of cow. This stuff breaks really rapidly. And MLOps just isn't designed to handle that. So what we kind of figured out really quickly when we founded Plainsight a few years ago was that we can't just cobble together like generic tools. We can't use like general DevOps tools, a little bit of MLOps, and some other random things. It just doesn't work. And it's because of that core kind of difference. When you think of traditional DevOps, it's described as a pipeline. You have a pipeline. You start over here on a test server, and eventually you get it into prod, and you do maintenance updates and continuous integration, continuous deployment type stuff. And it's kind of visualized as a straight line. What VisOps really needs, what Vision AI needs, is more of a loop. So that's a fundamental difference, and I'm trying to keep it kind of hypothetical here. Those tools don't work. So we've delivered, instead of a pipeline, we've delivered that loop, which helps retrain constantly and react to that dynamic world and keep up with it. Because otherwise, these things not only do they fail at 70% of the time, they fail within a week. Because that's what the real world's like.
It makes sense, Jonathan. So when we look at what you're doing at Plainsight, is you're incorporating the CI/CD pipeline of the traditional SDLC into the VisOps kind of approach, right? And making physical AI possible. But one of the things I want you mentioned, and I would love you to double click down on, is the challenge between MLOps and AI and understanding this in the release cycle. Is one of the things we talked about during the briefing was how Plainsight really does handle errors to make physical AI possible, right? That's a challenge that I think, like you were talking about, in traditional setups and traditional CI/CD pipelines, that's not easy, because you have to kind of cobble those pieces together to make it work. And I think that Plainsight, from what I understand, and you're the expert here, but tell me a little bit about how you're reducing that friction to make that physical AI possible.
Yeah, so we just talked about it. Every Vision AI model degrades over time, and this is a function of the law of entropy. I don't think it's. We try to be quite bold here. We are evangelizing some new concepts and some new ideas, but we're not bold enough to be like, hey, we're going to change the laws of physics. So trying to solve that problem it's not solvable. What we need to do is cope with that problem. So what we do is we kind of treat deployment and evaluation of Vision AI applications in production. They're first-class priorities of our platform and of our tech stack. They aren't afterthoughts. We really respect the kind of work of what, a long time ago was called IT ops engineers, DevOps engineers. Those are our guys. Like, we're infrastructure software guys. We care more about them than we care about, the scientists in the research lab. That's who we're building product for. That's kind of our North Star. So our platform is engineered explicitly to handle, unidentified objects, misidentified objects, incomplete data, and do it in real time, because that's what our customers need. And we kind of route those events into two directions. One is we route it into that loop I described earlier, and we use that to constantly retrain and then redeploy those models, and then we fully automate that. And that's kind of one of the core benefits we give to our customers. And the purpose of that, obviously, is to reduce that error rate over time. So while your typical unvisopsed vision AI application degrades very rapidly over time in accuracy. Ours actually improve in accuracy. And again, that's all automated. Now, the second place we route those events is into the customer's kind of business systems. So it could be as simple as like putting it on a display for a line worker to kind of react to an error in real time and correct it, or all the way up to like dumping data directly in an ERP system. But basically, the key for our customers there is flexibility. So we kind of support whatever they need, and it needs to be flexible because they've built business processes to react and exist in the real world, which is that dynamic, messy place. And to be able to support those flexible business processes that handle that environment, we need to be flexible as well. So it's really just driven from customer need, quite frankly.
Yeah, that I completely understand. Let's talk about that customer need. Let's talk about the developer persona, for example, right? That's one of the target personas that you were talking about here. When you look at the DevOps teams, the app dev teams, open source is a big kind of push right now. The entire ecosystem is a big push right now. So when we talk about plain sight and we talk about the impact, what does it mean to democratize the access to vision AI in that context? Like why is it going to make it easier for developers to incorporate vision AI solutions, and how is plain sight really accelerating that?
Yeah, for us it was simple math, really. We estimate there's about 20,000 computer vision engineers in the world, people who could cope with kind of random tooling and things being built on the fly and like deliver something in a lab environment that will work, like I said, in that lab environment, but not many other places. They're the inventors. They're the research scientists. If you take a step back and just look like, hey, the kind of generic title of a software developer, which there's many flavors of that, I'd say the lowest estimate I've ever seen is 25 million in the world, probably closer to 30. That's 3 orders of magnitude more people. So if we want vision AI to get into the real world and be deployed to be a useful thing for humanity and for customers, doesn't make sense to build product for 20,000 people. We're building it for 25 million people. And that's not some great revelation. I mean, you just stop and think about it for 10 minutes. I think everyone else would arrive at the same place. And so what we try to do is when we're building this VisOps vision and kind of evangelizing this new discipline to the market, we try to do it in a way that kind of translate esoteric vision AI engineering practices into the kind of universal language of just general enterprise software development. So we believe we can do that through product, and we believe we succeeded in doing that through product. So we can reframe things that a computer vision engineer understands really well and reframe it in terms and in language and in tooling and in workflows that just like any kind of enterprise software engineer who has a couple years of experience understands implicitly. And that's what we mean when we say democratizing access. And then the second part of that is also getting it out of that lab environment. So we want to do that by empowering people to get a whole new skill set very easily through good product. But we also want to get it out of the lab, and we want to put it in more edge environments. And that's the second kind of phase of what we mean by democratizing access. We'll feel like we've succeeded when vision AI is running on a trail camera in a remote forest in the middle of nowhere. To us, that's when we've succeeded, and it's the only way to solve that 70% failure rate you mentioned. And I'll be frank, since we kind of pivoted and said, hey, someone needs to build this, it might as well be us. Our customers have a 0% failure rate because this stuff works, and it just needs to exist, and it's the only way to solve it. Because, like I said, we can't fix the laws of physics. That's not going to be an option.
Sure, no, that makes a lot of sense, Jonathan. I hear where you're coming from. I was thinking when you were talking about the conversations I have with the audience that's maybe watching this today. When I talk to CIOs, right? CIOs say the 2 main problems that they run into with regards to deploying any new projects is complexity and skill gap issues. In fact, we see in our research that 67% of organizations are hiring generalists over specialists. So with that said, and kind of aligning to the democratization access of Vision AI, I think the other main factor here is to talk about the open ecosystem and what that means, right? So I think when we look at the interfaces that Plainsight's VisOps technology is using, where is Plainsight investing and where interfaces are you looking at?
Yeah, well, it starts, to your point, it starts with open source. So Kit, who is the founder and my predecessor, he was one of the founding kind of core team members of Kubernetes. I cut my open source teeth at Canonical, working on Ubuntu, which is the most popular Linux in the world. And some recent hires we've made at the leadership level at the company too are all kind of infrastructure, software, and open source veterans. So open source is core to what we believe. And it's the only way to make this work. Like, we're not going to establish a new standard in the market if we try to keep it proprietary. So kind of our core enabling technology that enables the VisOps platform that we built, and allows anyone else to just kind of build a competing project or do it in-house if they want to. We call that open filter, and we open source that back in last spring, kind of to go back to how long it's taken us to really get this right and build it. Like, that sort of foundational standard we kind of completed quite a while ago and has been open source for a while now. And so that's obviously the first way anyone can interact with what we're doing. It's like, do it any way you want and contribute to the project. And it's all transparent and open. It's all Apache too. So there's no open source, as I like to call it, where we're going to do a bait and switch like some other companies have done in the past years. But then kind of what we feel like we can add and provide value on top of that open source standard, kind of it starts with us meeting those software developers we talked about, those 25 to 30 million people, where they are. So we've invested a lot building a Plainsight MCP server where people can stay in their IDE. They don't have to leave. They can talk to our server in natural language because, again, they are not experts. They're not computer vision experts, not the people we're trying to really reach. Ask for effectively a fully functioning computer vision application through natural language prompt. It usually takes about an hour with tweaking. I mean, we can claim it takes minutes because it does, but in reality, people want to tweak things. So it's more like an hour or two once they're done customizing it. That MCP server will generate synthetic data to even bootstrap model accuracy and things like that. It'll get you to a point where the rest of the VisOps platform can take over. And the traditional Vision AI app, like we talked about, starts with high accuracy out of the lab and degrades rapidly. Our MCP server will kind of very rapidly get you a bootstrap model that'll get you over a threshold. And then the VisOps processes will actually take you up to like a 3 or 4 sigma accuracy rating and keep it there. And that's really the power of that VisOps vision and doing it properly, doing the infrastructure, the IT ops properly. And then there's a web portal, browser-based, where kind of engineering managers can go in and see what everyone's working on. You can do everything in there as well if you want to. We see most people kind of staying in their IDE on the front lines. And then obviously there's command line interfaces and APIs for when you've got things really scaled at your enterprise and you kind of want to just tie things directly to your other tooling and send out commands. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty comprehensive. And like I said, we didn't want to come to market with an MVP because this is kind of a new concept. So there's probably a lot more functionality than people are expecting for something that was announced, just last week.
Jonathan, Insight has come a long way since its inception. Open Filter really is that open way of kind of incorporating VisOps into those IDEs, like we talked about, really addressing that developer persona. We're at kind of at the end. There's a lot here for the audience to digest. Any closing thoughts around this? Where can they go to find out more?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest place is either go to OpenFilter.io or our GitHub if you want to learn more about that, or just go straight to Plainsight.ai to learn more about the product. There's a bunch of demo content. There's a really nice, it is long because it's more of a tutorial than a demo, but like a 17, 18 minute MCP server, like how-to video, or just, reach out to our team and we're always happy to help. We're a little slammed right now, I'll be honest. I'm desperately trying to hire more engineers to support customers. but we do our best to treat everyone like first-class citizens here. Like I said, we value that kind of blue-collar frontline IT worker who's like making things actually work, and not getting the $3 million job offer from Facebook to be an AI engineer. Like that's who we care about, and that's who we support. So we'll always have time for those types of people.
John, super exciting times. It really is a lot. I think 2025 was that year of innovation. 26 is a year of execution. I think we're really going to see it. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you for your insights. It's really been awesome. And a big thank you to all of you who tuned in. We do appreciate you being part of the AppDevANGLE community. But that wraps up this episode for today. We'll be back next Wednesday with another conversation diving into the tools, trends, and talent shaping the future of application development. Whether you're deploying at the edge, building with AI, or modernizing your cloud stack, we've got you covered. Be sure to follow us on social if you have any thoughts, questions, or just want to connect. Until next time, stay curious and stay building.